Virtual.
We have left the Ardennes forests in our wake as the welcoming Leicestershire countryside beckons for another stern test for almost 100 teams, with 12 manufacturers again being represented tonight and over the course of the weekend from the world of simulated sports car racing. The first two rounds at both Bathurst and Spa have helped this campaign to gather pace, momentum and plenty of drama, with the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit now providing another stern test, fitting backdrop and challenge for all involved. Having been around since the early 1930s and used as a military vehicle depot during the Second World War, it was the impetus of one man in the form of Tom Wheatcroft that would re-inject new life into this now iconic circuit, which spans just under 2.5 miles in length. It has its fair share of tests, with significant descents and inclines, tight technical sections, sudden changes of direction, heavy braking zones, and plenty of chances for providing side-by-side action and lots of overtaking. It's hosted GTE, GT1, Group C and GT3 machinery over the years, and tonight it sees the very best in the sim racing world come together, push the limit of adhesion and go for broke in qualifying in both splits ahead of this weekend's grandstand event, the halfway point of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 12 hours of Donington Park. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching, and thank you for joining us. It's Alex Goldschmidt and Andy McEwan with you back once again on commentary duty. Andy, very, very interesting developments post Spa-Francorchamps, the Thrustmaster. 24 hours of Spa. We've got new leaders in both splits. We've got Lada Sport Rosneft with the likes of Shevetalov and Ogorodnikov leading the way by 33 points in Split 1. Split 2, it's even closer with the top four covered by 16 points. And what's more, in both splits, we have a top four Aston Martin whitewash. Things are going to look rather different here at Donington Park, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Good evening, Alex. I think we'll continue to see this trend of, teams that do well in one race perhaps struggling at the next, and that is kind of the idea, really, of the format with the World Cup, to make sure that we have different teams doing well from one round to the other. There you can see the Split 1 standings with, as you said, Lada Sport Rosneft ahead by this decent margin, actually, because they were outside the top 10 in the previous race, but they managed to win at Spa last time, and of course that being a full 24-hour race, that has done them the world of good in the points. The Unicorns of Love second are then only 14 points ahead of the Ubik Events Racing Aston Martin, but it certainly looked good for front engine cars, hasn't it? The top 10 in Split 1, 9 of them are either Aston Martins or Bentleys, just the one exception to that, the GTWR RHG Academy Audi, that is 7th place in Split 1, and in Split 2 much the same story really, only one mid-engine car inside the top 10, so will Donington Park potentially see a bit of a shift back in the favour of some of the mid-engine teams, or will we continue to see this British domination as it generally has been?
Yeah, I completely agree, because obviously a lot of people were worried about the fact that Aston Martin would have the meritocracy after Spa-Francorchamps and coming here to Donington Park. It looks to be more a case of mid-engined or rear-engined, rear-wheel drive cars could have the advantage when it goes through the twisty stuff, going through places like, say, Redgate, Hollywood, through the Craner curves and the old hairpin. And that's going to provide a stern test. It is tight, it is technical. You've both ourselves in real life have actually commentated at the circuit. It does really throw the cat amongst the pigeons, doesn't it?
It does. It's one of my favourite circuits in the UK, actually. I've worked at them all pretty much now, as I know you probably have as well. And the racing that you get at Donington Park, be it on this Grand Prix circuit or the shorter national layout, is always exceptional. It's just got one of those layouts. It's fast, it's flowing, it's all about momentum. And so that generates really good racing, actually. When you get a good group of cars and they're all jockeying for position, it tends to be pretty close. But of course, it's also a real challenge for the drivers. That iconic sequence you can see there down through the Craner curves into the old hairpin, that is a really seriously demanding piece of racetrack. And then you've got the GP loop here through the Fogarty S's, a really difficult chicane, and then those two hairpins, which on the map look pretty simple, don't they? But they are the prime overtaking opportunities, especially the first one down at Melbourne. Yeah, it's going to produce a fantastic 12-hour race, and not the longest of laps either, Alex, so I expect these qualifying laps to be pretty tight.
Yes, we're running in the high 1 minute 25.8 at the moment going into free practice. So we will be covering both Split 2 and Split 1 qualifying, which will see the top 10 go through for a Super Pole shootout a little bit later on this evening. And realistically, looking at those that have come in, we've had a few withdrawals. The McLaren Shadow team have withdrawn from the series, as has Dowking Community, Logitech G Auto C Sports, and the second of the GTWR cars. There were 5 in Split 1, and that's the team of Scorpati, Cirello, and Michele Nerbi as well. James Baldwin has now moved in with the Yaz Heat crew. Obviously, Jardier on holiday at the moment. He's got himself a little bit sunburn, I'm afraid, at the minute, but he's enjoying himself. He's having a bit of time away, having a bit of a reset, refocus. So James Baldwin will be qualifying for the 149 Yaz Heat car with the likes of Mikhail Statsenko, Eamon Murphy, and Andrea Capoccia in that crew. And looking at the ballast as well. Also, Lotta Sport Rosneft, there's a basis on their win last time out at the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa, have the maximum ballast of performance ballast system, well, the success ballast system, as has been dubbed here on the SimGrid VCO World Cup. 40 kilos goes onto that Aston Martin, so that is going to be a bit of a handful. The likes of Kevin Ciclari, George Boothby, Niels van der Kikhout and Marek Shins in the 191, they're going to be running on quite a lot of ballast as well. Another Aston Martin, 35 kilos. And it all goes all the way down to Carbon Sim Sport with the likes of Maria Ford-Siedlow, Mikhail Nowakowski and Nick Babin in the 720 McLaren. They're going to have the least amounts of ballast on those cars that actually obtained it by finishing 15th in the previous round. Split 2, we've had a couple of withdrawals there. THR Esports and also both CMS Pro Green and Orange cars. So Pit Wall Live is up and running for those wanting to keep an eye on what is happening with regards to qualifying. So we've got close to 100 teams, 12 different manufacturers represented. We are at the halfway point of the season, and we will be going around a 12-hour span this coming Saturday. But to get a real taste of the appetite for tonight, let's see if we can give you an idea what happens on a hot lap here at the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. So going through into Redgate, first time of asking here on the hot lap on board the Ferrari 488 GT3 through the right-hander here at Hollywood and actually increasing the speed, pushing over 200 kph and up into 5th, going through the Craner curves, down the gears, down from 5th to 3rd, brushing off the best part of quite a few kilometres an hour, up through Starkey's Bridge and then through into Schwanzkirch before you've got to go hard on the brakes in this very tight braking, so it can be quite deceptive going through into McLean's and then into the very, very deceptive, what looks to be a single right-hander, ends up being more of a double apex with the amount of curbing. Now going down towards, down Starkey Straight, going towards the Father TS's. If you get it nailed perfectly, you can nigh on straight liners, but it is a tall order to do so. As the 333 Ferrari makes it through, we've got a couple of more corners to go. Down towards the iconic Melbourne hairpin. Hard on the brakes, first gear, right the way down to just under 60 kph on the apex, and then bring the car over to the right hand side once again for the approach to Goddard's. Down the gearbox once again, another first gear corner, and then just wait, bide your time, accelerate on the throttle out of the final corner. That's a hot lap here at Donington Park Grand Prix in the 488 GT3 Evo. And Andy, we said it was tight, we said it was technical. That Ferrari looked pretty well sorted there, didn't it?
Yeah, the mid-engine cars do tend to go quite well around here, especially through that final sector, through the chicane, down through the Melbourne hairpin, back up through the left-hander at Goddard's, and it looked really well planted and was carrying good speed, but crucially getting off those tight corners really well. But it is a circuit of two halves, because the rest of the lap is not at all like that. It's fast, it's flowing, you're usually in third gear for most of the corners, as you said, speed really does start building at some parts of the track, so it tests a little bit of everything. But yeah, for extracting pure lap time, I think a mid-engine car is probably the one to have. It's just better balanced as well over a lot of the crests that you have. There are 2 or 3 corners around this circuit where you are fully committing to the turn, and then you go over a crest and coppice at the far end of the circuit, the second of those 90-degree right-handers at the top end of the track. That's the one that really can catch you out, and a mid-engine car is just going to be a bit better balanced over that crest. So I expect the Ferraris, the Audis, the McLarens to be strong here tonight.
Well, there was some drama for one of the particular teams, which actually ended up winning the Callow Award back at the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps. And we've got one of their drivers, actually the driver that's going to do qualifying tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Andy, who we are now going to bring in from the 211 Sidemax Motorworks crew of Killian Ryan Meenan.
Yes, Killian joins us now then. Killian, thank you for taking some time out tonight to have a chat with us. We're going to have to start, I'm afraid, by talking about what happened at Spa. For those that weren't able to tune in or haven't caught up with the dramatic ending to your race in the 24 hours, tell everyone about it.
Hi everyone. We led the race for a significant portion of time, and I think it was 20 minutes or 24 minutes to go or something. We disconnected, but we managed to reconnect, so it wasn't the end of the world, and still finished in top 15. So it could have been better, but obviously it could have been worse. We couldn't have been able to maybe reconnect if something else had happened. So oh well, happens.
but must be incredibly frustrating. Can you take positives out of that race, though? The fact that you were in a winning position, you had such a strong run throughout the race. I mean, I know it's crushing in the moment to lose the result, but you proved a point, I think, at Spa, didn't you?
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty annoying. That situation that's kind of completely out of your hands. It's not something. It's not like a mistake that you've made. Like as a team member in that car or whatever, but I mean we drove well. We qualified in P1, so that was a positive we had going into the race, and then in the race we pulled a gap in stint 1, got an unfortunate drive through with a backmarker incident maybe like 2 hours in, and then obviously on the back foot in Spa because the pit lane is so long, but we managed to crawl back up and get into P1 again. So overall I think our pace was kind of, I don't think we were the fastest car at Spa necessarily. I think we just stayed out of trouble and stayed out of, sometimes which is more important than staying out of everyone else's trouble and everyone else's incidents. So yeah, looking back, the pace we had was great. We worked well together, and we got interval points. If we hadn't had interval points, it would have been a lot worse, but there was luckily interval points, so we kind of scored relatively high.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to have problems, at least have them towards the end, as much as it can affect your final result. As you say, at least you have the chance to score points throughout the race. Speaking of points then, championship-wise, we are now at the halfway mark here with the 12 hours at Donington Park. You're still in this, you're within 80 points of the championship lead, still inside the top 10 just about. Realistically, can you get properly into this championship fight, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what happened to us can happen to anybody. It's not something you ever want to happen to somebody in the race, obviously, from that position, but it can, and it does, clearly. I think we would have been P2 on points if it had ended as it was. So, I mean, we're not that far off. It's one error for a team, or a couple of teams to have a bad race at Donington or whatever. I think all of the Aston Martin teams are kind of fighting an uphill battle in this race, because it's not the fastest car here, and most of us are laden with kilos anyway. So I think the cars that finish high in Spa and scored high points will be kind of mid-pack, depending on stuff that happens up front, or any unfortunate things like disconnects or whatever. So yeah, we're definitely not out of it, but it's harder now than it was.
Well, glad to see that you are taking the positives out of that, and hopefully you can bounce back here at Donington Park. Best of luck for qualifying, mate.
Thanks very much.
There's Killian Ryan then, and Alex, if you look up the word heartbreak in a dictionary, you'll probably find a picture of that car next to the word. That was such a tragic end to the race for them. But, as he said, there are positives to be taken from that. If nothing else, they are carrying less success ballast for this race. You never know, that might help them bounce back and challenge for another win.
Yes, very much the case, Andy, especially with that torque that we know is customary with that twin-turbo 4-litre V8 behind that clamshell bonnet. It's anyone's guess whether Simax Motorworks might be able to do something about it. Don't forget, we still have the affiliate link with ExpressVPN. So if you sign up to a 12-month agreement, you get 3 months absolutely free, as long as you use the link on your screens at the moment. expressvpn.com/thesimgrid. And I think realistically, they're going to be looking at an opportunity to make their mark. They could have very well made it, but obviously with that disconnect, with just under half an hour to go, kind of reminded me of when you had the likes of Bruno Spengler, Timo Glock and Alex Zanardi running at the 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, and their engine terminally failed with an hour left on the clock. That's another definition of heartbreak and disappointment. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing whether Simax Motorworks really bring something, bring a bit of fire and brimstone to the party, and they've got something to prove here this weekend. That's very much assured.
Yeah, and it's easy for people like me in particular, going from the real world side of motorsport, to point and laugh at sim racing and say, oh, well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Someone disconnected and they lost their race result. But you're absolutely right. It is no different at all than a car breaking down in the final few minutes of a 24-hour race, and that happens an awful lot more frequently than you'd imagine. So yeah, it's unfortunate. They'll put it behind them, and I'm sure that they will bounce back. And that ballast, that success ballast, I think that might just turn out to be a blessing in disguise for them, because ballast is not going to be easy to carry around this circuit, especially through that final sector, accelerating out of the first gear hairpin at Melbourne, and again out of Goddard's too. Those cars that are carrying a lot of weight are going to struggle, so you never know, that might well play back into their hands. We'll get our first glimpse of whether it will do in the qualifying session coming up shortly.
Yeah, practice for Split 2 currently underway at the moment, I think, if memory serves me correctly. So we're going to find that, I've seen on the YouTube chat, good to see the likes of Renvelt and Andrea Benedetti. I think Daniel Joseph is enjoying the tune, so he's having a little bit of dancing jig in his seat at the moment. That's really, really good to hear, because everyone seems to be loving the background music that we've got. Don't forget, you can follow us on all the relevant social media channels, at the SimGrid on Facebook, at sim_grid on Twitter, and also at the SimGrid on Instagram. You can also head to thesimgrid.com for any information. There's plenty of championships still to come. We've got the public votes still out for the more female racers by Thrustmaster rockets. There are 3 choices, so make sure you head onto the social media to make your choice. And hopefully you'll join Lara Luft and also Jessica Bull, who are our official commentary team for that. Sprint Cup Season 4 on the horizon. Endurance Cup Season 3 well underway, and that's by Thrustmaster. And one of the biggest things that I'm going to take from not just the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps, but Lada Sport Rosneft have been on a really, really good tear-up of really good form at the moment, because at round 3, at Laguna Seca just quite recently, Shevatalov and Igor Ogorodnikov really did the perfect race, and they're cut. We've seen glimpses from the Lada Sport Rosneft crew, but they really come up trumps, Andy, at the minute, and they're looking to solidify that and carry on that consistency. Will the 40 kilos of ballast hamper them over the course of this event? That's the biggest question that we need answered.
Yes, and I fear the answer will be a resounding yes, but the key is what you can salvage from it. I'm looking down the points table now. There is nobody that scored well at Bathurst who then went on to score well at the Spa 24 Hours, and the same the other way around as well. Those that were at the front at Spa all really struggled at Mount Panorama. So having the ability to maybe just get 2 top 10 finishes in a row, that could win you a championship, given how inconsistent everybody else has been. So, yeah, that word consistency is going to keep on cropping up, I think. I mean, Lada Sport Rosneft, 15th at Bathurst, won at Spa. The Unicorns of Love, 14th at Bathurst, 2nd at Spa. Ubik Events Racing weren't even in the top 20 at the mountain, and they finished just off the podium in the 24 Hours. So if you can put together 2, maybe 3 finishes within the top 10 now to round this season out, that probably is going to score you more points than a team that, for example, wins this weekend at Donington, because in all likelihood they will then struggle at Kyalami next time out. So you're right, consistency is absolutely the key here. And if that's something that Lada Sport Rosneft or any one of those top teams can start to build over the course of this week, that could go a long way towards winning them this championship.
I think coming on to teams that were at the sharp end of the grid come Mount Panorama, Odox Motorsport, perfect example of how things can go from north to south rather quickly. They finished 2nd at Mount Panorama. Spa-Francorchamps, they had one of the biggest blows to their campaign. They had a DNF, and that has dropped them to 13th in the standings. I mean, DB1 Triton Racing and the Bentley won at Mount Panorama ahead of Odox Motorsport, with current reigning and defending champions, the GTWR R8G Academy, the 157 Audi, with the likes of Giorgio Simonini behind the wheel of that car. They rounded out the podium. DB1 finished 17th, GTWR R8G Academy 16th. And then I look further down, Ambassadors of Renault-Elton 32nd at Mount Panorama in the 995 Aston Martin. They get 5th at Spa-Francorchamps. It just goes to show how much of a change there has been. And then I look at Split 2. All right, get this. The top 3 in the standings at the moment, Sim RC Endurance Team, Black Hawk Racing and XL Racing by Randvelton, they all finished in that respective order for Split 2 for the Thrustmaster 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps. McLeod Racing Team finished 1st at Mount Panorama, 20th at Spa, All In Racing 2nd at Bathurst, DNF, they're 13th, and Hybrid Academy 3rd at Mount Panorama, 30th position at Spa-Francorchamps. That just shows how things are going to be. But now qualifying is going to get underway, and the top 10 from Split 2 will go through to the Super Pole a little bit later on. And there are plenty of racing talents in this field. Some of the youngsters coming through. There's a familiar name to everyone here at the SimGrid. Patrick Nage in the number 42 FS Racing Aston Martin, one of many Aston Martins on this grid. But realistically, this is going to be the first real opportunity that we see here today, Andy, of how this track is going to evolve. And at the moment, it's 25 degrees Celsius, a little bit cloudy overhead, but still pretty dry, and the drivers are going to get these cars up to optimum temperature rather rapidly, especially with the carcass of the alloy wheels heating up the sidewall and the carcasses of the tyres, and the brakes thereby will also get a good amount of heat into them, and we're going to see some rapid fire laps over the next 18 and a half minutes when everyone puts the hammer down.
Yeah, nice warm ambient temperature at the moment, which shouldn't be a surprise. It hardly ever rains here in the UK after all. This being the one British round of the championship, you wouldn't be surprised perhaps to see a bit of weather interfere before the end of the weekend. Perhaps not tonight in qualifying, but maybe over the weekend in the 12-hour race. But yes, drivers then going on to their first flying lap then in a 20-minute qualifying session. And as Alex said, if you can get into the top 10 here, you are through to the top 10 shootout. Robbie Stapleford then looks as though he is at the head of the queue. We ride on board with the Rocket Simsport McLaren heading through Starkeys into the left-hander at Schwantz. Really got to pick your braking point now into the right-hander at McLean's. Nice and neat and tidy over the curb on the inside. This is a good McLaren circuit. Robbie Stapleford himself is very good here at Donington Park. And the Rocket Simsport squad are also a really, really strong outfit. As we know, they haven't necessarily had the best of fortune so far this season. Let's see if they can turn that around here at Donington Park. But Alex, look at that track map. Although Robbie at the moment has a bit of clean air, and he's on the grass, so never mind, he's not going to capitalise on that clean air for the time being. The field pretty much extends around the entire circuit now. Some drivers haven't even completed their outlap yet, and we're 3 minutes into the session. Finding clear space and keeping it for long enough to put in a few quick laps in a row ain't going to be easy.
No, especially when you have 44 cars around this 2.498 mile circuit, as Rampazzo in the 522 has actually just exited out of pit lane. So that was one of the Ferraris, I believe. The 522, that is the Wheelspin eSport car. There's Andre Michel from Pulse Simsport in the number 53. Audi R8 LMS Evo, another mid-engined rear-wheel drive car, 5.2 litre naturally aspirated V10, pushing out a considerable amount of horsepower as now the German flings the car through into Redgate for the first time of asking, as we are starting to get our first lap times coming in. And at the minute it is Wojciech Lukaszek in the number 500 entry. That's the Forza Italia .pl esports team running in the Ferrari. Next up they've got Patrick Nage and then Sebastian Dreyer. I'm not at all surprised that if you put a Honda NSX in the mix, that is going to be at the sharper end of the field. Sebastian Dreyer in the number 69 car. That's the XL Racing by Renvelten entry. They round out the top four as Tarek Adam in the 404 Hybrid Academy car. That is, of all cars, the Bentley Continental GT3 that goes up into second position. There's another Bentley crew there, Johannes Weiss in the 556 Butlerpal Motorsport car, running with Nico Hilbrand, Richard Schaefer and Christian Stock. Commentated on Johannes Weiss quite a few times, as well as Nico Hilbrand. Hilbrand actually running with Honda in the SRO esports side of things at the moment. Pretty good crew. They did get a good result last time out. Finished 5th at Spa-Francorchamps at the Thrustmaster 24 hours. Spoke with Nico Hilbrand actually post-race off record, so to speak, and he said no, we're really, really happy with the results. But at the minute, Robbie Stapleford doing exactly what he needs to do for Rocket Simsport. Currently fastest, a 1 minute 25.494 in that 720. And the gap between him and Lukaszek at the moment, Andy, is 3.5 tenths of a second.
Yeah, that's a decent chunk around a lap time that's less than 90 seconds, isn't it? So really impressive stuff there. Up into 6th position there, Christoph Verstappen in his Aston Martin. So proof there that you can make these Aston Martins go well here as long as they're not too heavy. Jan Kaminski, another quick driver here at the wheel of the 999 KK Sim Racing machine. Another Aston Martin, struggling a bit more though, into 18th place at the moment. Good variety of car though in that top 10. McLaren, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Honda the top 5, with another Mercedes, 2 Aston Martins and a Bentley also in that top 10 for good measure. So early days, I know, we're only 6 minutes into the session, but we are seeing a number of different teams having a stab here at getting into that all-important top 10. That is the priority here. It doesn't really matter, does it, whether you're fastest or second fastest or 8th fastest. If you're in that top 10, you get another chance to go in the top 10 shootout. And we saw a few teams, didn't we, Alex, at Spa last time, that maybe scraped their way into that top 10 shootout and then actually really excelled and got themselves on the front few rows of the grid.
Yeah, one case in point, Igor Ogorodnikov for Lada Sport Rosneft. He scraped in by, I think, the back end of his virtual Nomex in that Aston Martin at Spa-Francorchamps for split one, as Christopher Neugebauer in the number 174 entry. That is the Abgefahren community. There's a bit of love for them in the YouTube chat at the minute. And you know what really is funny? When people can't actually look at surnames and realise that they're not spelt like Verstappen, I'm afraid. They're in the YouTube chat, whoever that was. As, we've got definitely a few cars trying to get through Redgate. It's the Osmium by TX3 car with Alex Metier behind the wheel, going down through into the Craner curves. Very French tricolor-inspired livery there, with a predominant white background on that Aston Martin. Wouldn't you say that? There's so much colour in the SimGrid VCO World Cup.
Yes, there is, and that car certainly stands out, doesn't it? And looking good there, although traffic already starting to cause problems, isn't it, through Redgate Corner there? If you catch people, particularly coming out of the pit lane, it's a tricky pit exit here at Donington, because you feed out onto the track, directly onto the racing line, and not just onto the racing line, but in the braking zone for turn 1 at Redgate. So once a driver on the track has committed to that braking zone, they can't really do anything to avoid a car that comes out of the pit lane. So the onus really is on the car rejoining the track to try and do so safely. Right, Joel Forsberg here goes up to 22nd then, the Swedish driver, gaining a few places there in his Aston Martin. Here is Verstappen, though. He is going quicker again. He's 8th quickest right now, so he is provisionally in that top 10, but you can see he's slipped down to 9th even since I started that sentence, and he isn't going to improve because he dives for the pit lane.
We've just seen that Matteo Soggiacomo in the 888 entry, that's the VIG Project Strato Ferrari. You can now see what Andy was talking about a bit earlier on. Minguet in the 602, the Belgian goes across the line and goes up into what is 13th position at the moment. Maximilian Volmuth in the number 16, XL Racing by Renvelten. Aston Martin is on the verge of the bottom of the top 10. Top 10 covered by 7.5 tenths of a second. Robbie Stapleford still leading this first of 2 qualifying sessions. So we have this where pretty much all and sundry. And Delia in the 714 entry, that is the digital the DAS crew, also known as the technical terminology last season in Formula 1 with Mercedes, but here it stands for Digital Automotive Sports, and he's currently a few tenths up at the minute. 32nd is the Aston Martin, but unfortunately has just invalidated that lap as we go to the 112 entry. That's the Bentley from DCSimRacing.nl. And that's got Errol Verve behind the wheel. Has just gone through the Bogatti S's. Sasha Glatter, I'm hearing, in the number 81. Black Hawk Racing car, currently 2nd in the standings. Partnered with, a familiar name in that crew. Chris Sever, as now Sasha Glatter. The German comes across towards the start-finish line, improves to P28. And when you look at it from this perspective, from P10 to P28 is just over 4.5 tenths of a second as we hit the halfway point in this initial qualifying phase for the Super Pole here at the 12 Hours of Donington Park. A big thank you once again, as always, to our partners and sponsors, to Thrustmaster, Coach Dave Academy, VCO, that's the virtual competition organisation run by Florian Hasper out of Munich, and also our good friends at AK Informatica. Robbie Stapleford looks to be improving in the McLaren. He seems to have that 720S hooked up now coming out of Goddard's. Let's see what is going to be the benchmark now for the teams to chase. 1 minute 25.449. He could have gotten maybe a little bit higher up than that, but that still gives him, at the moment, Andy, a nigh on 0.3 of a second advantage to the number 500 of Lukaszek in 2nd position.
It does indeed, and he is therefore almost guaranteed to take that team through into the top 10 shootout, isn't he then? We've had a change there for, what's that, 5th position now, and that's significant because that's Jakob Osterman jumping into the top 10 in the number 71 Aston Martin, so that now demotes Verstappen in the 214 Aston Martin out of the top 10 by less than 100th of a second, from 10th back to about 15th place, or 16th place in fact, is covered by just 1/10 of a second. It could not be any tighter towards the back of that top 10, which really is where all of the action will be in this session. Here comes the number 7 Ferrari then, Desync coming out of the final hairpin. He's had quite a bit of traffic here though, and only improves to 18th place, but yes, this is going to be really, really tight, and Tariq Adam here has been demoted out of that top 10 as well, down to 12th place. He jumps back in though, goes 9th in the Bentley, but he has spent the entire session, hasn't he, hovering around that top 10, the back end of the top 10 for that.
Yeah, the number 71, that car has quite taken, I think it was 26 kilos of ballast, and they still stick it P5 in this opening session. There is the number 13, that is Kevin Chartier from France in the All-In Racing Honda NSX, up to 19th position. And Jeroen Merman in the in 22nd position, the MSL Racing Ferrari now just goes through the Fogarty S's and now blasts its way down towards the Melbourne hairpin. Just under 7.5 minutes of this session remaining. Currently the top 10 covered by just under 7 tenths, and that's the VIG Project Strato Ferrari at the moment that is on the cusp of being in the danger zone. Alexei Meyer in the 56, and that's the funny Formula Wombats car, is 6/1000 slower on the previous attempt. There's Carlo Delia in the DAS 714 Aston Martin, rounding out the top 23 at the moment. Well, top 33 comes out of Goddard's. Now hurtles towards the line. P16, just a fraction behind Christophe Verstappen from Belgium. Scarpellini in the Aloni V Racing Team car improves to 32nd. Track position has been rather crucial here at Donington Park, and as soon as you get stuck in a bit of a chain, which I've just noticed on the track map, Andy, look at the amount of cars literally hurtling their way through. Everyone's just trying to improve. The track's improved in terms of temperature, but it looks like the number 500 of Lukasek has actually found some time in that Ferrari coming out of Goddard's and is looking and gunning for pole. It's going to be close between him and Stapleford, and it's just 0.13 of a second between first and second position. So the Ferrari crew have found some time in the last couple of moments.
Yeah, but we're seeing a lot of this actually, I think, in this session. Drivers that are getting stuck in traffic, and it's also easy to invalidate lap times around here. It's easy to run too wide out of the old hairpin, out of McLean's, the chicane, the hairpins even. And so we are seeing teams finding big chunks of time. And there you go, look, Paul Schlaum into 4th position now in the Mercedes. All it takes is for you to hook that one lap up where you've got no traffic and you don't exceed track limits, and you can jump up a dozen or more places. That's exactly what Christophe Verstappen could do with doing here in the NSN Racing Aston Martin. Number 214, he slipped down to 16th. Remember, he was in the top 10 not that long ago, and with only a quarter of the session to go now, he goes 3rd, and that is a prime example of exactly what I was talking about. He finally strung together that clean lap with no traffic, and look at the improvement that he found.
Yeah, so there we go. Christophe Verstappen, now Demian Pavlos from Carbon Simsport 1 goes ahead of Verstappen, and by 33 thousandths. Then we've got Minge in the 602 Audi, still 22nd at the moment. 22 cars covered by 0.834 of a second. Kevin Chartier from All In Racing going a little bit wide coming out of the old hairpin. But the gap really from first to... Okay, this is not going to compare to what we're going to see in Split 1, I guarantee you that much. Top 35, Andy McEwan, covered by 1.1 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've just had another improvement there into the top 10. Robert Rucana in the Audi jumped up something like 14 places to go 7th quickest now. So that knocks Dario Baik out in the number 43 Mercedes. And another improvement there into 5th position for Christopher Tvarian in the 741 Mercedes. He's now actually the quickest of the Mercedes in the session. He was well outside the top 10. So now it is Sebastian Dreyer in the Honda who is outside looking in, 11th at the moment. Verstappen back across the line reclaims this 3rd place from Paulus in the 666 car. It's been a ding-dong battle between the two of them. Chartier now coming through. He is 27th. What sort of time can he find? Goes 10th. Just about sneaks in by about 2/100ths of a second then and knocks out Jakob Osterman. We are seeing big improvements here. No one is safe, Alex.
No one is safe, and what's even more impressive, the two Hondas on this grid, with Chartier just going 10th, Sebastian Dreyer in the number 69 XO Racing by Randfelsen Honda NSX P12, and is less than a 10th outside of the top 10. This is how close it's going to get, folks. And effectively, Thomas Pearce says, what's the Super Pole cutoff? It's whoever makes it into the top 10 after a 20-minute qualifying session. And Carlo Delia tried... Oh, that was close. I mean, I think Carlo Delia has just invalidated that lap time as a result of having to look up the inside. And that's something you don't want to have happen to you in qualifying when you're trying to go on a hot lap and someone, I think, unintentionally impedes you.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're out there trying to do your own thing, and if you are on a flying lap and the car behind you just happens to be quicker, well, sorry, but you don't have to move out of the way. You know, you're on a flying lap. It's if you're on an in or an out lap, or if you've invalidated your lap and you're just backing off to try and get clear space, that's when you need to really have your wits about you and focus on who is around you out on track. Because if you're not, then you can very easily end up impeding someone or even have contact with someone, and that can ruin both of your qualifying sessions. Don't think we're likely to see an improvement here from the 7 Ferrari. 27th is where they stay, indeed. And we now check in with a few of those further back, improving. You know, even if you can't get into that top 10, you could still improve your grid position. One driver who is having a disastrous session is Errol Verwey, isn't he, in that number 112 Bentley, who has been a front runner recently in the Kyalami mini-series, battling toe-to-toe with people like Patrick Nage for podiums and race victories in that category. 43rd from 44 runners, Errol Verwey at the moment, only one driver behind, that being Gabriele Della Rocca, who hasn't actually set a time yet, and Verwey 1.7 seconds off the pace. So a couple of heavy hitters here, not looking likely to trouble the top 10, and in fact could find themselves starting right at the back of the grid, and that, even over a 12-hour race, Alex, is going to pretty much put you out of contention before the race even starts.
I've got one word for that, Andy. Ouch. And that's just for starters. But around a tight, technical, twisty, you know, fast-paced circuit around here at Donington Park, it's the shortest circuit on the calendar. I mean, it's Zo Oleg Erkolev decides sideways is the order of the day. That's not what you want to do coming out of the Fogarty S's and going into the Melbourne hairpin, and has to back out of it. We've got 30 seconds on the clock in qualifying, and at the moment, Jerome Merman in the 482 car still is effectively the car that is sitting pretty in 10th position. And out of the manufacturers represented, we've got McLaren, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, and an Audi. And that has got Robert Ruakana in the 83 entry from Space Pace Esports. Time is about to hit 0. It's crunch time. Who is going to get into the top 10? And you know what? The funny thing is that the Fogarty S's are catching people out. I did say on the hot lap, you can nigh on straight line it, but if you get it completely wrong, that is going to invalidate your lap on this. As I think we might have a possible change. Alexei Meyer looking to be rather hot to trot here in qualifying. Doesn't improve, qualifies 7th. He improved his lap time, but didn't improve his position. Manos Gerardis, and that's a surprise and a half, because Dario Balkin, the number 43, that's the slow rate, that's the sim racing clock, that's the the SLO Racing team, have just jumped from 14th to 9th on their final lap. So that now drops Jerome Merman outside of the top 10. And now Robert Ruakana in the 83 is the one that's got to be biting those fingernails to the quick right now, Andy, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he won't be confident just yet, that's for sure, because of these big gains we're seeing people make. So if there is anyone just outside that top 10 that's still on a hot lap, they could be able to get in there and knock them out. Here comes the 808 car across the line, 34th to 23rd. Now, what about this? This is the 11th placed runner. Jeroen Merman goes across the start finish line, goes 8th, and yes, he's done it. He's got back into the top 10. Ruakana is out in the Audi, and Ruakana will miss out on the top 10 shootout by 12 100ths of a second. I said it was going to be tight, and I said we were likely to see some late improvements, and Jeroen Merman there has pulled it out of the bag. He may have just scraped through, but he's in the show now, and as we saw last time at Spa, even those that just scrape into the top 10 on a single lap showdown, remember the top 10 shootout, they go out one by one, they have no traffic to worry about, they can get their head down, just bang in that one quick lap. We could see some of those, like the 482, like the 111 and 43 Mercedes that just scraped into the top 10. We could still see them challenge for a top 5 in the top 10 shootout.
Right, top 10. Get this. Coming across the line, it was half a second. Top 40 covered by 1.5. If that's not going to whet your appetite for what we're going to see very, very shortly in Split 1, I don't know what to say to you. But that just shows how close it was. And to be honest with you, the Super Bowl, it's going to be one driver out at a time, and it's one lap only. And if you get it wrong, we saw that at Mount Panorama earlier in this season. It was absolutely... oh my goodness me, the bacon chants have started happening in the chat already. The emojis come up thanks to the Real Racing Club. But... you know, I mean, that's just whetted our appetite, hasn't it, Andy?
It has, and it's exactly what I expected, honestly, from, as I said, a short, snappy layout, a big grid. We know these teams are really evenly matched, and by the way, that was only Split 2. Wait until you see the Split 1 qualifying session, because that could be even tighter. And yeah, it bodes well not only for the race at the weekend, but also for the rest of qualifying. I think the top 10 shootouts are going to be really, really tight. And as we saw in that session there, Alex, it's very easy to make a mistake here at Donington Park. Now, that's true of a lot of racetracks, including Spa, where we raced last time out. But the difference here is that if you make a mistake at Donington, there is grass, there is gravel, and then there are tyre barriers and concrete walls even at points to collect you. Whereas at Spa, you have that nice Formula 1 grade tarmac runoff area. So we are less likely to see people really messing things up and getting themselves involved in big incidents at Spa than we would here at Donington. So making a mistake in this top 10 shootout could have some pretty big ramifications. Also, as we saw there, very easy to exceed track limits and lose a lap time, and I think we'll definitely see some of that when we start moving into the top 10 shootouts as well. I think those Fogarty S's are going to catch a few more people out before the night is over.
Yes, indeed. Courtesy of VCO, pole position for Split 1 will gain $25 US, as now the floodgates open for Split 1 qualifying for the third round of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 12 hours of Donington Park. The first car out on the circuit, it is the number 28 of Julian Beck in the WPS Racing Team Audi. And again, we are seeing... Now, the good thing is that we have not just sim racing drivers, we have real life racing drivers, one of which, Adam Christodoulou, has joined the SimGrid VCO World Cup, and he is in the 199 entry. That is the SG Stern car, Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo, and Christodoulou was showing to be, was possibly going to be doing qualifying, but it's Fabian Fabeck that will be behind the wheel. It's really good to see people such as Adam Christodoulou getting involved in esports and sim racing. James Baldwin obviously ran with Team Rocket RJN and British GT, World Fastest Gamer 2. You know, I mean, Andy, I think probably we'll give you an opportunity here, mate. Shall we go on a hot lap with Julian Beck, shall we?
Yeah, why not then? We ride inside the front bodywork of the WPS Racing Team Audi as we accelerate out of Goddard's and pull across to the left-hand side of the road, then downhill steeply into Redgate Corner, and then along to the right-hander at turn number 1.
Well, we're now going through, we've exited out of the old hairpin, through Starkey's Bridge, up to the swift left-hander here at Schwanz Curve, down into the right-hander at McLean's now, up the hill, ever so slightly, through into Coppice, a deceiving double right. So there's the first bit of curve you see on the inside, and then there's a little bit as Beck takes the wide line going on to Starkey Straight. Now the run down towards the Fogarty S's. We have seen this in Split 2 qualifying, catch a few people out. Neatly negotiated there by Julian Beck. So he will be the first one to set a benchmark because he now hits the anchors hard. Down from 5th gear, tight on the apex, runs it a little bit wide through Melbourne. Now over to the left-hand side, the Audi to the right stays out of the way. Down once again through the gearbox into Goddard's, out of the final corner. Across the line we go in the number 28 Audi, puts in a 1 minute 25.962, but instantly that is bettered by the Jean Alesi Esports Academy Ferrari with Danilo Santoro behind the wheel, and the times are going to rapidly drop. Now looking at what we saw in qualifying, Split 1, Robbie Stapleford, 1 minute 25.449. So expect that time to be bettered here. I've just seen that Niklas Huben in the 33 Rutronic E-Racing, Niklas Huben won the 2.4 hours of Imola quite a time ago when the likes of Tobias Kronwald and George Boothby went in the pits. But now Arthur Camera in the BMW Team G2 Esports M6 GT3 now goes quickest, 1 minute 25.758. And what's even more astounding, well, not at all surprising, that car might be built like a tank, but it has absolutely no success ballast on that vehicle. There's James Baldwin, and it's in the 149 Yaz Heat Pirelli car. They do run the 149 Yaz Heat car under the name Richard Mille in the Endurance Cup by Thrustmaster. And realistically, what can happen is this is where things are going to change. And Andy, already top 10 covered by just under 8 tenths.
Yeah, Dominic Blyer to the top of the times by 15 1/1000ths over Arthur Camera in the BMW, so it's looking pretty tight at the pointy end. Another Bentley there of Zahir Essa goes into third place, with the Mercedes of Yunus Savalainen fourth. Except that's out of date because Giorgio Simonini goes third in the Audi then. Good to see Giorgio back on form again this week. What can James Baldwin do? Well, only go to the top of the times by over a quarter of a second. James Baldwin fastest, well now only by a tenth actually, of the Ferrari of Chris Harteveld. All very, very dramatic at the top of the times. Apologies, by the way, for bailing on you halfway through that fast lap.
Hey, look, it happens. It happens. Technical difficulties. That's all I'm going to say on that one, Mr. McEwan.
Technical difficulties. I pulled the wire out of my monitor, which is something I will endeavour not to do again.
Okay. Yeah, you've warned yourself on that one. You don't need to ask me to give you a wrap around the coals for that one. But yeah, these things do happen. But already top 10 covered by less than 4.5 tenths, as I've just seen Alban Bouquet in the 601 entry. That is the eSport Performance Racing team that have just gone into 10th in the Audi. At the moment is James Baldwin for Yaz Heat Pirelli leading the way. Chris Harteveld in the number 32. That is partnering with Mocco Mure and Andrea Benedetti. That makes it a McLaren Ferrari 1-2. Yunus Salvalainen from Griffax Engineering in the number 11 Mercedes. Dominic Blyer from Race 1 winners DV1 Triton Racing have just been dumped down to 5th position because Florian Fleer for the Prime E Racing car has just gone up into 3rd place. Jonas Salvalainen, however, the Finns always do tend to fly, and just up ahead he's got Artur Kawa in the number 62 BMW Team G2 Esports, and Salvalainen bails out of the lap. Camera goes second to within 63 thousandths of James Baldwin.
Who I'm impressed with here as well is Dominic Blyer. Dominic Blyer, remember, in that 111 Bentley, 5th in the points. So, yeah, they really do need a good result here, don't they? They did struggle at Spa, but they are into that top 10. So too now is Mikhail Novakovsky in the 720 McLaren. So that now means that Zahir Essa, who was in the top 3 a minute or two ago, is on the bubble in 10th position. Then just outside the top 10 is Nicholas Huben in the number 33 Audi. Dominic Blyer about to come through and complete another lap as Dennis Schoeniger jumps into the top 10 now, jumps up 30 positions. But what can Blyer do? Can he trouble the top spots? Can he make himself safe in the top 10? Yes, he can. Goes 4th quickest does Dominic Blyer, meaning the top 4 cars, in fact the top 5 cars in the session now, Alex, covered by less than a tenth and a half.
Now, I did say that the top 40 last time around were in split 2 were covered by 1.5 seconds. We're now a tenth quicker, and there is the Odox Motorsport car, the 121 DNF. Last time out at Spa-Francorchamps, having an unfortunate DNF. It's put them on the back foot, and they have just invalidated. It seems like the 121 behind the wheel of that car at the moment. They haven't got the likes of Alberto Garcia. They've got Jesus Sicilia behind the wheel of the 121 Audi. Now coming through in towards the braking zone for Goddard's. Jesus Sicilia trying to do level best. Nice and tidy on the apex there, coming through Goddard's. Let's see where the 121 Audi ends up. Goes P40 on initial attempt. Still 11 minutes 40. There's Florian Fleer in the number 77. Formerly known as MRL Sim Racing, they're now known as Prime E Racing, but they have still stuck with the tried and tested McLaren 720S GT3 as Florian Fleer does exactly what we've seen so many people do so far in qualifying, Andy. He's invalidated his lap going through the Fogarty S's. Now, that's springing warning bells for me, reference the race, because the amount of track cuts that we might unfortunately see could really put the frighteners on everybody at the moment. And one of the other things that has showcased just how much things can change in a race, Igor Ogorodnikov currently 32nd in the points leading Aston Martin, which is also, whilst I say that, it is maximum success ballast, but still to be, 7/10 off of provisional pole from James Baldwin is not a bad shout, but to be in 32nd, they've got to exercise damage limitation, and they've got a 33-point lead coming into this round here at Donington Park.
Yeah, and that's especially disappointing actually when you look at where Bastian Richter is in the number 14 Unicorns of Love Aston Martin, because that is the next heaviest car, and they are 21st at the moment. So, okay, only a couple of tenths quicker than Ogorodnikov, but that couple of tenths makes all the difference when you look at just how tight it is out on track at the moment. Wolf Matuchka there just misses out on the top 10. Dennis Schoeniger is just inside the top 10, but he makes himself a bit more secure now by jumping from 10th to 7th there in the number 21 Audi, another car that finds itself well outside the top 10 in points, and really needing a good result here today. Right then, James Bacon, what can he do? He's heading down the exhibition straight then, past the Donington Park Exhibition Centre, from which it takes its name, into the S's. Careful not to take too much curb on the inside. That will, A, unsettle the car, but more importantly, see your lap time get disallowed because of track limits, but he did manage to keep within the lines there just about, so Bacon should now be able to work his way through to the end of the lap and log a lap time. His benchmark was only good enough for 41st, and by the very wide line that he's taking into Goddard's there, Alex, I think he's focused more on starting the next lap off well than he was finishing that lap quickly. Yeah, no improvement that time. Let's see what James can do on the next one.
Yeah, James Baldwin looks to be improving, so we could dip below the 1 minute 25.4s very, very shortly, because at the moment it's another McLaren in split 2, the one that was driven by Robbie Stapleford. Also, I'm hearing that Chris Hartveld in the number 32 Ferrari is also improving. James Baldwin, 1 minute 25 24.389, extends the gap to Arthur Camara from BMW Team G2 Esports to just over 0.147 of a second. Chris Hartfeld about to cross the line and improves, but we just missed his time. But look at this for closeness. I mean, 6 1,000ths between Dominic Blyer and also Chris Hartfeld, and that's in the battle for third going into the top 10. Zahir Essa looks to be improving as well, the number 777 Bentley, who have Quaid Claessens and Raymond Mooney. We have seen in previous occasions that Amir Hosseini has joined that crew, as Zahir Essa goes P3. Oh, and he gets to within 6 1,000ths of Arthur Camara in the 62 BMW. Marek Shins, another familiar face, another familiar name here in the 191 Racing Line Motorsport Aston Martin, currently P24, does not improve. James Bacon makes his way up into 32nd position in the 125 Ubik Motorsports car. But Arthur Camara, it seems like the 4.4 litre twin turbo M-Power V8 doing its very best, and it looks like Jordakis in the number 34 Aston Martin. That's the Greek Souvlaki squad. They sometimes do run in Lamborghinis like they do in the Endurance Cup by Thrustmaster, as Jordakis goes P12 up from 25th as Arthur Camara comes out of the final corner in the BMW M6 GT3. Just under 7 minutes to go in qualifying. Goes P1 by nearly a tenth over James Baldwin. A 1 minute 25.290. A good showing there. Marek Shins seems to be struggling a little bit here in the Aston Martin, considering of where they actually finished last time out, Andy. And Racing Line Motorsport P3 at Spa-Francorchamps last time out, so they've got quite a bit of ballast on that car.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? Yes, you'd expect them to go well because they did well last time, but they're carrying ballast as well. Dominic Blyer goes third in the Bentley, so moves ahead of the other Bentley of Zahir Essa. James Baldwin, meanwhile, I believe, is also on a pretty tasty lap. He might be about to reclaim the top spot in the session. Here he comes into the Melbourne hairpin. He is just a fraction under, 1/10 of a second away from the pole position time set by the number 62 BMW of Arthur Camara. Can he find that 10th of a second that he needs to go back to the top of the times? Again, this will not give him pole position, but it will at least solidify them as the favourites going into the top 10 shootout. And yes, he finds a 10th and then finds another half a 10th as well. So James Baldwin back to the top now with a 25.239, 0.05 of a second clear then of Arthur Camara second. Blyer is third, Essa fourth. Harteveld is in 5th. If you go down to the back of the top 10, by the way, Florian Fleer now is 10th in the number 77 McLaren, with Jonas Savalainen in 11th, and Giorgio Simonini back out of the top 10 now, albeit less than half a tenth away from that magic P10.
Yeah, the 157 GT RHG Academy car, the reigning and defending World Cup champions coming into this season. It has been a season of twists and tails for a lot of competitors, as Danilo Santoro in the number 27 Jean Alesi Sports Academy Ferrari comes out of Goddard's. Will they improve out of the top 15? Not on this particular occasion, I think. And it looks like Jonas Salvalainen is gunning for the top 10, as Arthur Camara and also Dominic Blyer have pulled the car into the pits, as has the number 22 Rocket Sim Sport car. Salvalainen, literally by 15 thousandths, has just said to Florian Fleer, right, you're out of the top 10, buddy, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, and that is how tight it can be. You don't have to improve by a lot to find yourself jumping up a number of places. Jesus Sicilia here, by the way, is already in that top 10, but as we've seen, 7th place with 4 1/4 minutes to go is not safe. If you want to make it into that top 10, you've got to try and find an improvement, and that is what Sicilia is trying to do then. 7th at the moment, 4 1/2 tenths away from the fastest time of the session so far, but I think he'd settle for top 5 if he could do it. Can he do it? No, stays in 7th place then, so Sicilia there with no improvement, stays where he was, and that's going to leave them under a bit of pressure now going through the rest of the session. Savalainen back out of Coppice Corner, down the exhibition straight now. There's an Audi just ahead, which he'll be hoping isn't going to delay him too much. That might be the number 33, I think, just ahead, which is down in 18th place at the moment as Danilo Santoro comes through. 15th for the Ferrari, goes 12th, and just not quite enough then. That's actually an identical lap time to that of the 11th place car of Florian Fleer, but because Florian set it earlier, he gets the nod for 11th place. Savalainen in 10th then, out of Goddard's hairpin. The Mercedes grunt starts to work its full effect, and he goes 4th. That is a lot more like it, and that might just be enough for Savalainen to feel a bit more comfortable now.
Yeah, just ahead of Sahir Essa, as it seems like we're getting quite a few drivers trying to moving up the order. Jonathan Boivin in the 416 Honda, that's the Elvis Grattan team. This has just unfortunately had a bit of a disaster in that lap. Chris Hartfeld is pushing the limits of adhesion here at Donington Park, literally bumping his way through the second half of the Fogarty S's before running down towards Melbourne. And at the moment, the top 10, which is rounded out by the 21 of WPS Racing's Dennis Schoeninger. They are covered by just 0.462 of a second. And someone says that this is absolute madness. That's completely true, but Chris Hartfeld, P5, Adam Chmielewski in the number 1 car, that's from PPR Esports. He goes to within a fraction of the 18 thousandths outside of the top 10. And the top 40 cars, 41 make it, 1.038 seconds. Florian Becker in the 911 GTRC Endurance team puts the Porsche up into P11, 6 1,000ths outside of the top 10. That's how close it is getting, as Florian Fleer and the Prime E Racing number 77 McLaren 720S looking to try and get that a little bit further up the end. Also, Giorgio Simonini in the reigning and defending champions are now trying to get into the top 10, and he is just under a 10th out. Simonini goes P8. That's what we wanted to see, Giorgio. Back into the top 10. Florian Fleer about to cross the line from 14th. Does he improve? No, he doesn't. As there is Michele Palera in the number 154. That was a clear invalidation of lap time coming out of the Fogarty S's. 60 seconds to go. And with the top 15, that has got Danilo Santoro rounding that out, Andy. They are covered by half a second. And we ain't done yet.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Noble in 10th position at the moment. He's on a 25.689. The next 10th of a second carries you all the way down to Janis Chardakis in 16th. So from 10th to 16th, within a 10th of a second of each other. Wolf Matuchka here in 18th place is only a fraction further back. So a 10th of a second, that's nothing, isn't it? A 10th of a second, it's blink of the eye stuff, making the difference here between not only making the top 10 and not making it, but starting on the 5th row and perhaps starting on the 7th or 8th row. It is ridiculously tight here in the midfield, and that is going to make this final minute of qualifying here, because there are now 10 seconds left, but of course there are people that will still be on flying laps. It's going to make this final minute or so very, very tense indeed. Wolf Matuchka then in the pink performance Audi comes through Goddard's corner out onto the pit straight once again. He is 19th at the moment. He comes across the start finish line and only improves to 16th in the end, so doesn't quite move into the top 10. It's still Mike Noble then on the bubble at the moment. Florian Fleer trying to do something about that, but can't improve. Stays in 14th place as well. Novakovsky there in 5th position is where he will round things out. Is Mike Noble going to hang on here, then, I wonder, in that 1-2-3 FFS Racing Aston Martin, which, remember, is 6th in the championship, and they've actually had quite a consistent season so far. So for Mike Noble and the whole FFS Racing team, another top 10 starting position would suit them rather nicely.
Yes, and by literally being, not much ahead. Check-in is out for the session. Jack McIntyre for Rocket Simsport in the number 22 car. Currently 18th at the minute, and he is just under 5.5 tenths off of provisional pole from James Baldwin from Yazheed Pirelli. And he's invalidated his final flying lap. He was on course for maybe getting into the top 10, and that has cost Rocket Simsport quite dearly. 18th position, and the biggest thing is that with this time fast running out, Dominic Blyer decides to pull the DB1 Triton racing car into the pits. Sabit Imahimi does not improve, but James Baldwin makes it through to split one as our pole sitter by 51 thousandths in that session, ahead of BMW Team G2 Esports. That was crazy, Andy, because the top 44 covered by just under 2 seconds. 42nd, that had Christian Nembrini in the 666, 1.25 seconds. Craziness. And it still provides us with fantastic entertainment every time these drivers either go qualifying or they go racing here on the SimGrid VCO World Cup.
But I love this format, though. This qualifying format, I think, is the best out there because it combines your sort of traditional, 20 minutes, do as many laps as you can, try and set a fast lap time qualifying session. And then you get the real show of who makes it into the top 10, what those top 10 teams can then do in the shootouts. And the shootouts are coming up momentarily, everyone. So don't worry, qualifying is only halfway through. Still an awful lot more track action to come. And yeah, it really, really does provide the best of both worlds, qualifying-wise. Absolutely fantastic qualifying format. And as you say, Alex, never fails to provide entertainment.
Indeed, we'll be getting the Super Pole shootouts first for Split 2, and then for Split 1 underway. But I think we've got someone waiting for an interview very, very shortly. It's actually the team that placed in P10. That is the 123, and I think it's Gogo Panka that I think you're going to be speaking to now, Andy.
Yes, indeed. Gogo Panka joins us now then, and you've just watched your teammate Mike Noble do just enough to get you into that top 10 shootout. That was close, wasn't it?
Yes, hello everyone. It's nice to be here, finally. That was intense. There was quite a bit of memory during the session, but Mike managed to have a clean run and a good lap, so we're happy about that.
I mean, Mike's lap time, it was a 1:25.689. The next tenth of a second takes you all the way down to 17th place. I mean, where can you find a tenth of a second out on track? It's one little mistake, and it could have been a very different story for you guys.
Yeah, and we actually still had a tenth in it. The last lap was almost the lap that actually had that further tenth, but this is very good. It was actually quite funny because when he put it, I think P8 or P9, and we were saying that, oh no, we have to do the interview now if we fall back to P10. So it was quite funny. But yeah, that was a crazy lap, especially that we accidentally practiced on the wrong success ballast. So it was a bit of a surprise when we joined the server that we miscalculated that. So, but luckily the car still worked. It was fine.
Now, you guys have had a pretty consistent season. You've not been grabbing the headlines exactly, but 11th at Bathurst, 7th at Spa. There is some merit, I think, to that kind of a performance, because we're seeing other teams go from winning one week to being outside the top 20 at the next race because of the success ballast. So, was this a strategy to just try and bag consistent points, or if you get the chance to go for a race win, are you going to take that?
No, we try to make the most of it, and we have I think one of the strengths that the team has is it's quite consistent, and we can bring the best out of the car. We don't sandbag, and we don't slow ourselves down to get a worse result, to get less ballast in the next race. That's not something we do. It's been fine, but we've been quite unlucky. At Spa, we had a disconnect and some further technical issues, and we actually had podium pace in that race, so that was quite disappointing to not get a better result. But we still managed to climb back to P7, so that was very good for the team. And yeah, this sort of top 10 or around P10 is what we usually aim for. That's a realistic goal, regardless of how much success ballast we have, I would say.
And now you think that Mike Noble had another tenth of a second in him, maybe, in that qualifying session. Well, if he could find that tenth of a second now, that would be quite useful, wouldn't it? Because it could move you up another couple of rows on the grid. What have you said to him ahead of this top 10 shootout?
Well, it wasn't me, but the Andre Franke, the other teammate. He told him just absolutely send it because we have nothing to lose. We qualified P10, so if he sends it and he bags a good lap, then we gain, and if he doesn't, then we would just P10 anyway. So yeah, he's gonna try his best.
Awesome stuff. Well, I'll let you get back to the team now. Best of luck for the top 10 shootout.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There you go then. Well, they make a valid point there, don't they, Alex? That, the team that squeaks in with the top 10, with 10th place in that provisional qualifying session, they've got nothing to lose now. They may as well go for it, even if it all goes wrong. They're not going to start any worse than 10th, but they do have the chance to improve a few more positions if it all goes right.
Yeah, well, it looks like we're going to get the real meat and potatoes underway here for the Super Pole for qualifying for round 3 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, the 12 hours of Donington Park. And don't forget, if you haven't already taken advantage of that affiliate deal through ExpressVPN, still time to do so. Head to expressvpn.com/the SimGrid, and you can get free 3 months. You sign up for a 12-month agreement with ExpressVPN, one of the most dedicated and secure VPNs that can be used across the globe in multiple different countries. So it looks like we are waiting for proceedings to get underway. And effectively, the format is each driver has an out lap, a flying lap, and an in lap. Every single driver needs to complete all 3. And now we have our first of 10 drivers here in the Super Pole. And effectively, it is a case of now 1 lap, Andy. It's about getting up to speed, making sure everything is optimum in terms of tyre, brake temperature, engine. You're at map 1, you've got low fuel, you've got enough to get these 3 laps done. It's all about putting that car as high up the top 10 as possible, ready for lights out on Saturday.
Yeah, and you've got a couple of things in your advantage now because you are the only car on track, so there's no chance of traffic, especially for this 10th place team as well. As we've said, nothing to lose. You may as well throw everything at it here and see what happens. Of course, the downside of this session format now is that you only get this 1 warm-up lap, which means that the tyres aren't necessarily going to be in the ideal operating window when you start your flyer. The driver also might not be in a proper rhythm. Some drivers take a couple of laps, don't they, just to get themselves properly up to speed, and we saw a lot of that in the first 2 qualifying sessions we've had tonight. Times really improving in the final few minutes of a 20-minute session. You don't have that luxury now. You have 1 shot at this to try and bag yourself pole position, and that is what we're about to see Bayek here attempt to do then. Dario Bayek across the start finish line in the number 43 Mercedes onto his flying lap.
So into Redgate, now through the right-hander at Hollywood, and here is where the roller coaster ride truly happens here at Donington Park. Steep descent down the hill. You're pushing well over 220 kilometers an hour in 5th gear before you go hard on the brakes, down to 150 kph through 3rd gear, down the old hairpin. Now up the hill once again, through Starkey's Bridge, up to Schwanz Curve, and then it's a descent here, going through into McLean's, tight on the apex.
Towards the Melbourne hairpin. This is the part of the circuit where the Ferrari does tend to be particularly strong, and the 482 car then that was 8th fastest, this was, in the previous qualifying session, and start its lap then out of Goddard's it goes, across the start finish line, and we'll see whether or not they're able to challenge the top time, which still is set by the 111 Mercedes for now.
Yeah. So that'll be, well, the thing is that Manas Gerardis has actually gone provisional top in this split, 1 minute 26.427. Now we ride on board with the Dutch driver, be the 56 crew of funny Formula 1 bats, with Bolokov behind the wheel of that car. And that is one of 2 Aston Martins that have made it through to the Super Pole here in the top 10. But Jerome Merman going through in towards the right-hander here at Coppice before the back straightaway onto the exhibition straight. The Ferrari was the car that we saw on the hot lap when we went live earlier on here on the stream. Let's make sure that hopefully Jerome Merman does not invalidate his lap time going through the Fogarty S's. Looks rather clean on that. And just 2 more corners remain. So the time to beat by Manos Gerardis is 1 minute 26.427. Can Jeroen Merman make good his intentions and strike while the sun shines here at Donington Park? The track temperature has increased to 27 degrees Celsius, as has the ambient air. So now Merman comes out of the final corner. What's going to be the time for the Ferrari? 1 minute 26.373. So that means that Jeroen Merman has got a good lap time. He's ahead of Gerardis and Bike at this moment, Andy, but now here comes Alexei Meyer.
So far, according to the script then, isn't it, the 8th, 9th and 10th fastest cars in the initial qualifying session have each completed their laps, and it's the 8th fastest team, number 482, that's quickest, and the 10th fastest team, number 43, that is slowest. But we'll, I'm sure, see a bit of jumbling up as the session goes on. Alexei Meyer then in the 56 funny Formula 1 bats Aston Martin makes his way down through the bottom part of the circuit, then climbs back uphill again through Schwantz Curve and into McLean's Corner. Then the car that was 7th fastest in the earlier qualifying session, number 56, looking to try and get a few more championship points here and start challenging for 10th place, for a top 10, in the championship standings. And a good race here at the 12 Hours of Donington Park will do you the world of good in that regard. Worth noting as well that the sim time at the moment is just coming up to 10 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, so we're not yet at the hottest part of the day. We could see that track temperature just creep up slightly over the course of the qualifying sessions. That might maybe favour some of the earlier runners if the track temperature gets too hot, of course. Then the lap times will no longer be as quick. It's registering those optimum grip levels at the moment, so optimum opportunity then for Alexei Meyer to try and go to the top of the times. Let's see what he does then. Accelerates the Aston Martin out of the final corner, comes across the start finish line, and he's only 4th, so that was not a great lap there then from Alexei Meyer. Slower than the 3 cars ahead of him, who he was quicker than in the first session.
Yeah, next up we get to the halfway point of Super Pole for split number 2. As Paul Schalm now takes over in the 166 entry. It's the VitoSimRacing.de car. So through Red Gate, now through into Hollywood goes the Mercedes before going through into the Craner curves. And you've got to have a lot of commitment. You can see the way that car just literally flies its way with that rumbling 6.2 litre naturally aspirated V8. You can see that Schalm is taking a little bit of curb and then a little bit of grass maybe, going through into Starkeys before Schwantz Curve and then into the right-hander here at McLean's. And it's rather deceptive here because you've got a little bit of a 20 or so degree incline up the hill through into Coppice. You've got to really nail the throttle well coming out onto the exhibition straight because you don't want to clip the second apex coming through Coppice. So now the 166 makes its way through into the Fogarty S's, and Paul Schalm makes it through, keeps away from the tyres on the left-hand side going into the Fogarty S's, and if you clobber that car is going to be rather second-hand rather rapidly.
That certainly won't help your lap times either, will it? If you
no, it never will.
Through the chicane. But anyway, out of the final hairpin he goes. The body language of this car looks pretty good, doesn't it, on this lap? He's been certainly wrestling it around, but another example there, I think, Alex, for the point you made earlier on. A car that looks like it's going quickly isn't always going that quickly, and in fact that is the slowest time we've seen so far.
Yeah, we've got the McLeod Racing Team version 1 with Christopher Tverin behind the wheel, the Norwegian driver. They took the victory at the opening round of the season at Mount Panorama, so the Mercedes can it fare any better than the 166 driver? And we'll find out very much very soon as that Mercedes, again, just like looking at the sheer speed. Okay, this might be sim racing, but even I'm impressed on how committed these drivers are going through certain parts of the circuit, especially the Craner curves, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a full commitment sequence of corners though, isn't it? If you lift, you will lose quite a bit of time through there, so yeah, you've got to be on it. These cars though, of course, carry an awful lot of downforce these days, and they're perfect for negotiating that high speed first sort of half of the lap before it tightens up into the final sector. That is where the 741 Mercedes of Tverin is heading now, through the left, off through the right. Oh, that was a bit scrappy. He carried a bit too much speed into the left, I think, and that just compromised his exit speed on the run down into the Melbourne hairpin. That might have lost him a tenth or two, and that is all going to prove important given how tight the times are here today at Donington Park. Qualification then for split 2 of the Donington Park 12 hours. Let's see what the 741 Mercedes can do. The final Mercedes to go in this top 10 shootout. How much time did that mistake cost them? Will they be able to jump into the top 5? No, it is a slow lap again. The times are getting slower now, not quicker, Alex. That's not supposed to happen.
No, but keep your eyes on who's out next. Damian Pavlos for the number 666 Carbon SimSport Blue car. Mid-engine, 4-litre, twin-turbo V8. It's got a hell of a lot of torque behind it, and that could be a car, not just that one, but also the number 23 Rocket SimSport car that took the top of the timesheets with Robbie Stapleford a bit earlier on. Now we're going to go up to full racing speed. Damian Pavlos hits the accelerator hard going down the Wheatcroft straight into Redgate, tight on the apex for the McLaren, and you can see a little bit of a twitch as he applies the throttle going through into Hollywood. Now down the hill into the Craner curves, and bringing that McLaren right up to full chat as it hurtles its way down in towards the old hairpin. Hard on the brakes, a little bit of grass cutting there. I think Damian Pavlos was trying not to do a Valtteri Bottas there, I'm afraid, but going through into Schwanzkurve and into McLean's. A bit of a scrappy lap at points, but you know what? That car is looking hooked up and he's giving it the beans.
Changing direction nicely, isn't it? I'm definitely noticing that. That always has been one of the good things about the McLaren, but he's really living life on the edge. Once or twice here, I was expecting to hear the call from Michael Hamlet in my ear that he'd invalidated the lap. Once going out of the old hair, but again through Coppice, he was using a lot of inside curb. He is pretty neat though through the Fogarty S's, so that's probably his last chance to really completely lose the lap through invalidation. Now he's just got to get it through these tight, awkward, clumsy hairpins at the end of the lap. They're not much fun to drive. In the race over the weekend, they will provide us with good overtaking opportunities, but on a hot lap like this, it's just so easy to throw your lap away in the final sector. Paulus then comes across the line and sets a new benchmark, and what a lap that was, a 26.0. 6.5 tenths quicker than anybody else. That is more like it.
And we've still got 3 more cars to go. We've got a Ferrari, we've got an Aston Martin, which is, funnily enough, up next, Christophe Verstappen from Belgium for the NSN Racing 214 Aston Martin crew. Got this car into 3rd place by the end of the 20-minute qualifying session earlier on this evening. Now makes his way down through Hollywood, through into the Craner curves. Just see how committed Verstappen is. Yeah, he's just as committed as Pavlos was just on that previous tour, but a very different drivetrain setup here. Through Starkeys, up through Schwanzkurve, taking a good bit of curb on the left-hand side, trying to rotate the car in through McLean's. Now up towards the incline here, through into Coppice. It's a little bit wider, and he's lost a little bit of time because the back end stepped out to the left going through Coppice. And that's one of the things here, Andy. You try and muscle your way through Coppice and use the outside line. The back end can sometimes get a bit drifty.
Yeah, absolutely, because of that crest that you're going over, and he's wide again, and he's invalidated it. He's invalidated it. Verstappen has invalidated the lap at the chicane. So there we go. That is one on the number of drivers to invalidate laps through the chicane for those keeping count, and of course that means that he will now start 10th place and should have been inside the top 3. This car was 3rd quickest in the session earlier on. Verstappen is not going to be happy with that.
No, I know we both know for a fact that Verstappen will be kicking himself for saying, you know what, I should have taken it a little bit easier. But now we get to the final couple of cars, and this is Wojciech Lukaszek in the 500 entry. This is the Polish crew running in the Forza Italia.pl esports team, and this is going to be a lap that we might need to keep our eyes on, because the Ferrari we saw on the hot lap a little bit earlier on, very, very well purchased in terms of grip, respective of high speed, mid speed and low speed corners. The Ferrari could throw the cat amongst the pigeons. It could upset the 666 of the Carbon SimSport Blue crew. But then Robbie Stapleford is going to be the one that's really got the pressure to deal with, and he's got to soak that up. But it's Lukaszek that's now got to fire the warning shot across the bow. And this Ferrari looking pretty handy going through the Fogarty S's. That was pretty neat and tidy there for the 500.
Yeah, again, changing direction well, as you'd expect from the mid-engine Ferrari. It rode the curbs pretty well too. The Ferrari looking pretty compliant over the curbs and the bumps. So that, again, bodes well. It obviously tells us it's a drivable car, which will help them come the race on the weekend. Right then, Lukaszek through the final turn. Was second fastest in the initial qualifying session. Can he challenge the top time here? No, not quite. Second fastest then for Lukaszek. Just misses out on the top spot, but that means he's guaranteed to start inside the top 3 for the race this weekend. There is only one driver though left to go, and Robbie Stapleford, remember, had a decent cushion in the initial session, so in a way, he's got confidence, Alex, that he knows he can do this, but equally, the pressure on his shoulders. Everyone expects this to be the fastest lap of the session. Can he deliver?
Yeah, Robbie Stapleford will thrive on that pressure right now as he goes through the right-hander at the old hairpin. McLaren absolutely at full racing speed, full qualifying trim, up through Starkey's, now through into Schwanz curve. For hard on the brakes, going through into the right-hander here at McLean's. Now circumnavigates his way out of the exit of the corner, through into Coppice. Tight on the apex, allows the car to drift out a little bit coming onto the exhibition straight. Robbie Stapleford looking pretty racy right now here in qualification in the Super Pole Shootout for Split 2 into the Fogarty S's. Turns the car in, uses a minimal amount of steering input to just coax the car through. Now it's the final 2 corners. Through into Melbourne, tight on the apex. He's now going to wind the thing up to volume number 11, come out of the corner, bring it over to the right hand side, and then use a good approach here to Goddard's, but he's just got to watch out because he's got Lukaszek in the 500 just up ahead, who pulls into the pit lane. Out of Goddard's. Does Robbie Stapleford put Rocket SimSport on pole position for Split 2? It's happened!
Wow, but only just. That is very, very tight indeed. I'll tell you what, I don't think he'll be that happy with Lukaszek. Lukaszek was hanging around quite a lot, wasn't he, getting back to the pit lane, and very nearly was in danger of getting in the way of Robbie Stapleford, but thankfully it didn't put Robbie off too much, and he does just snatch the pole position. That was a brilliant effort, and having to deal with that extra distraction in the final sector as well. Brilliant drive, that.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to Damian Pavlos from Carbon SimSport Blue in the 666. Absolutely brilliant job, and you know what that means? That is a McLaren front row on home soil here at Donington Park. That's going to be interesting for Split 2, isn't it, Andy?
Yes, pole position by 6 1,000ths of a second though, so I mean I don't think they're going to run away with the race, are they now? Let's be honest, it's going to be a brilliant battle in Split 2, as indeed it was last time out at Spa and indeed at Bathurst. Split 2 has really been providing us with some brilliant entertainment so far this season. Right then, let's have a word, shall we, with the man of the moment, Robbie Stapleford, who joins us now in the box. Well, Robbie, you had a decent cushion actually in the initial qualifying session. Not such a commanding pole position time there, just 6 1,000ths of a second quicker, but it was quick enough. You're on pole, well done.
Yeah, just had a slow out lap, got the tyres up to temperature, went round. Went over the line, I was like, oh, have I done it? And then I just saw the results, just beat him, just by a little margin. But yeah, just want to say thanks to Nick Dealey for all the help all week, and yeah, I hope it's a good one on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. This is now, of course, only a small part of the job done. You've got the small matter of a 12-hour race to negotiate now, but I'm sure you guys are confident in your game plan, and clearly the car has raw speed. Can you convert that into race pace as well?
We've done a couple of practices, and we've definitely got the pace, so we'll just see how it happens on Saturday, whether we've got it then still.
At the end of that lap, we noticed there was a bit of traffic. You caught the Ferrari a bit sooner than you probably expected to. Was that a distraction at all?
I think I lost a bit in the last corner as he was just a bit slow, but luckily we still got it, so it's not that big of a deal.
Good stuff. You're not going to complain too much, I suppose, when you come out with pole position. Robbie, congratulations. Best of luck for the race.
Thank you, Andy.
So Robbie Stapleford then gets the pole position by the narrowest of narrow margins, Alex. That was fantastic. And again, that was just the appetizer. We've got Split 1 top 10 coming up shortly, and their initial qualifying session was even tighter.
Yes, it was indeed, Andy McEwan. I mean, good to hear from Robbie there. Don't forget, there is plenty of action still to come. Obviously, we've got the round 3 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup coming up this coming Saturday. Also, a big thank you to our partners, as always, Coach Dave Academy, Thrustmaster, the Virtual Competition Organisation, and AK Informatica. So what we're going to do, if we can, let's go to a brief commercial break. We'll be back in just a couple of moments' time.
Virtual.
Welcome back to continuing coverage of qualifying for round 3 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup. It's the 12 hours of Donington Park. Alex Goldschmidt and Andy McEwan back with you once again. Andy, we've still got another 10 cars to go, and this time it's for Split 1. I mean, it was really good to hear from Robbie Stapleford. You know, okay, 6 1000s, but pole is pole. He did it on merit, even with the 500 Ferrari still taking a very, I think it was more like a Sunday afternoon drive in the countryside at 30 miles an hour, trying to get back to the pits. But, you know, Robbie said at the end of the day, it's still pole position and it's a McLaren front row here on home soil.
Yeah, I think the Ferrari stopped to do a bit of plane spotting, didn't they, on the way back to the pits? Donington Park, of course, situated right next to an airport. But and that, by the way, is a feature that I was delighted to see made it into the sim, was that the planes do, in true Donington Park fashion, sail at quite low altitude above the racetrack. But yes, despite that distraction, that and the planes, he was still able to set a time that was good enough for split 2 pole position. But I tell you what, this battle that we're shaping up for now in split 1 is gonna be pretty epic, isn't it? I mean, in qualifying 1, just half a tenth of a second covered the top 2, and the entire top 10 were covered by less than half a second. So I think now, with a level playing field, no traffic to deal with, in theory, we should see even closer times. And I'm amazed, Alex, we've only had one driver in the sin bin so far for exceeding track limits on their flying lap. Only one driver has had a lap time disallowed so far.
Yeah, Christoph Verstappen. I loved how you brought an ice hockey terminology right into there. Well, that could be rugby or ice hockey, whichever your preference. But plenty of content still to come. The qualifiers for Sprint Cup Season 4 ends this coming Sunday. Also, there's a public vote at the moment on Twitter and Instagram for the public voted track for the finale of the More Female Races by Thrustmaster Rockets, which will head back on track next, on the 5th of July for its season finale. And also, the SimGrid anniversary party hits broadcast back on July 1st. We have the welcome return of Chaz Draycott, who has been very, very busy, I must admit. Actually caught up with him this past weekend. He'll be joined by David Christie as the SimGrid anniversary party will happen on the 1st of July at 2030 Central European Summertime. But without further ado, let's not keep you waiting any longer. We're going to go to Super Pole split number 1. So again, the format is exactly the same for splits 1 and 2. It is out lap, flying lap, in lap, and every single car has to complete all 3 of them. And the first car that will be going out is Mike Noble, actually, funnily enough, the 123 Aston Martin of FS Racing. And again, track temperature is pretty much what we saw previously. 27 degrees here, Andy. But the funny thing is, with Donington Park, I've just been keeping an eye on how many corners there are around this circuit, and it's an equal parity between both the sidewalls of the left side and the right side tyres getting their fair share of torture.
Yeah, it gives the full car a work over. It's tough on the brakes as well, surprisingly so. There are only 1 or 2 big braking points on the track, but you're using the brakes into quite a lot of high-speed corners and really balancing the car as well. The majority of the real corners, though, are right-handers through Redgate, the old hairpin, McLean's, Coppice as well. So it is those left-hand side tyres that do take the biggest pounding, especially when you're on full fuel at the start of a race run, for example, and you have to do that full 60 minutes before you can come in and pit. That left front tyre, especially on the front engine cars, does receive quite the work over. So Mike Noble then, FFS Racing, their lap time that Mike did in Q1, which was good enough to get him into the top 10 shootout, was a 125.689. So that is his first target, to try and go a bit quicker than that. Remember, the team reckoned he had another tenth of a second or so in his back pocket, so time to put his money where his mouth is now and see if he can prove that. He'll also, of course, be looking to get as far up the top 10 as he can. Remember, this is the team that is 6th in the championship, actually, in Split 1, having yet to have a top 5 finish. But I really do like the way their season's been going, Alex. We said, didn't we, at the top of the show, consistency this season over the 5 races might just trump race victories, because if you win a race, you're very unlikely to repeat that feat at the next one, whereas if you're finishing middle or back end of the top 10, you should be able to put a more consistent season together.
And courtesy of our sponsors VCO, the pole position setter for Split 1 will automatically get $25 as part of the prize pool. And also, in terms of the race victor in Split 1, will bag a cool $350 for every race win, and the prize money will go down all the way to 15th where they'll pick up $15 because I mean effectively there is a $10,000 prize pool split between the top 3 finishing teams in the entire championship. So the champions get $6,000, second $3,000, and third $1,000. And the thing is that it's $2,000, it's like $10,000 being divided as prize money for each round. So effectively 4 of that 10,000 has already gone over the past 2 races, as now we see with Mike Noble as Jesus Cecilia in the 121 looks to be making his way out in the Odox Motorsport car that ended up P9 after the 20-minute session earlier on. And also we've got 7 different manufacturers in the top 10. So we have McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Audi, BMW, Aston Martin, and Mike Noble puts in the initial benchmark 1 minute 25.950, and now it's down to the mid-range, well, the mid-engined 5.2 litre V10 of this howling Audi R8 LMS Evo as Jesus Cecilia takes us through on a lap here at Donington.
Yeah, into Redgate Corner he goes in the Audi then. So Mike Noble was about 2.5 tenths or so away from the lap time that he did in the first session, but we don't expect these lap times actually to be quite as quick as that, because they have to do it on slightly lower tyre pressures with just this one out lap to get themselves up to speed. So decent effort that from Mike Noble. He was also very ragged through the Fogarty S's. He took out one of those plastic floppy markers, and I'm worried for a second he might have exceeded track limits, but thankfully avoided that. Jesus Cecilia then, ninth fastest with a 25.665, at a quarter of a tenth quicker than Mike Noble in that session of incredibly tight margins that we saw earlier on. Comes out of Coppice on what has been so far a pretty clean lap, you'd have to say. But it's this final sector, isn't it? It features only 3 corners, really. The chicane, well, 2 corners through the chicane, I guess, and then the 2 hairpins. But this is where you can make or break your lap, and this is where the Audi should be strong. He uses all of the road there, and just a tiny bit more coming out of the chicane. Now pick your braking point. He's outbraked himself badly into Melbourne, though. That's not necessarily the end of the world, though. You can pick up the late apex and carry good speed up the hill. He might just have got away with that. Let's see, into Goddard's. He can't do it quite so easily here, though. Has to keep a nice tight line. That's definitely the quickest way through the corner. 25.95 to beat. Can he do it? Yes, he can. At 25.7 then. Jesus Cecilia does go quicker, even with that little mistake down at the Melbourne hairpin.
He also had a little bit of a mistake coming out of the old hairpin as well. He went 2 wheels under the grass a little bit, I think I saw, going through into Starkey's Bridge. But here comes Giorgio Simonini. It's the car that is the reigning and defending champion from Season 1. The Italian now makes his way into Redgate in the Audi R8 LMS Evo. Gets the car a little bit wide going through Hollywood to get the real carry of momentum down the hill, through into the Craner curves as the Audi fires its way through the picture-in-picture, through into Old Hairpin. A good run there through out of the exit, through into Schwanz curve. Now up the hill through into Schwanz, having gone through Starkey's. Now into McLean's, tight on the apex from Simonini, who coming into this season signed up the allegiance with Romain Grosjean's esports troop, the R8G Academy, and they're helping to bring newer talents through into esports through a variety of different sim racing platforms. Simonini looking to best a 1 minute 25.794 through the Fogarty S's. He goes now into the Melbourne hairpin. 2 more corners for the Italian to circumnavigate. Tight on the apex, doesn't run wide, neatly applies the throttle. Good application from Simonini. He's got 1 more corner to go, and can he beat Jesus Cecilia for what would be the provisional pole time here at Donington Park? We're about to find out. Simonini heads towards the line, misses out by what was that? Probably a less than about a tenth and a half there. Did Simonini miss out by?
Yeah, that was really, really close, wasn't it? But Simonini, of course, then was quicker than Cecilia in the first session. Slower, though, in the top 10 shootout. Goes to show that you can't just rely on those initial qualifying times to give you the full picture for the grid come the end of the session then. Back to Bentley's now then, and the 777 Bentley of Zahir Essa, who comes down into the old hairpin. This is the sequence of corners the Bentley really enjoys. He's very, very wide over the grass though. Doesn't really lose you too much time unless you really bounce awkwardly and lose control of the car completely, which Essa thankfully didn't. It takes quite a bounce to unsettle this big, big Bentley, which really does stay well planted to the road. Essa's time then that he set earlier on was a 25.5. If he can do that again, he'll be on provisional pole by a couple of tenths of a second, but so far everyone is around about 0.2 of a second away from the time they set in that 20-minute session earlier on. So if Essa can at least match that sort of trend, he should still go quicker than Cecilia. Down the hill he comes into the Melbourne hairpin. Now he's been through the bit of the circuit that the Bentley enjoys. Now he's got to endure these tight hairpins. Although it's a very torquey engine in the Bentley, it does accelerate quite nicely for such a big heavy car off the hairpins, but still it just looks very awkward, doesn't it, round these tight corners. Misses the apex at Goddard's, that will have lost him a tenth or so. Accelerates away to the start finish line. So here Essa comes across the line and only goes forward, so he's the slowest driver so far. A combination there of a couple of mistakes and maybe the Bentley's ballast as well, just preventing him from challenging for pole.
Now we've got the highest placed GTWR RHE Academy car. It's the number 3 car. Chris Hartveld in the number 32 Ferrari. Now we'll take the mantle of seeing whether he can best Jesus Cecilia, who's still at the moment with a 1 minute 25.794 second lap time around the 2.498 mile circuit here at Donington Park Grand Prix. Let's see if the Ferrari is working well in terms of both man and machine in harmony. Through Starkey's Bridge up towards the left-hander here at Schwanz Curve. Chris Hartveld looking rather planted in that number 32 Ferrari as they come out of McLean's up the hill towards Coppice. Let's just see how far he decides to take the curb. Not by much, but still allows to carry the momentum through rather nicely onto the exhibition straight. Now decides to bring the car over to the right-hand side. Just see how committed he is going through into the Fogarty S's. Nicely committed there. Pretty much nigh on straight-lined it, but still made sure that he kept 2 wheels on the circuit at all times. Into Melbourne hairpin. It's got Goddard's. It's a bit less of having to endure it in a Ferrari, because you're really using that mid-engined rear-wheel drive drivetrain to its absolute most. As now coming out of the final corner through Goddard's comes Chris Hartveld. Will he beat Jesus Cecilia? Goes P5 and is 6/1000 slower than the Bentley of Zahir Essa. Next up, Michał Nowakowski.
Exactly the same thing happened though, didn't it, remember, in the Split 2 qualifying session? It was going as we expected for the first few cars, and then the middle cars weren't able to go as quickly as those that had been before. So we're seeing a similar trend. I don't know whether the track goes through a bit of an evolution here maybe, and so that it favours the earlier or later runners rather than those in the middle. We'll see whether or not Nowakowski can book that trend then, because Nowakowski was in the top 5 earlier on then, 5th quickest in that session. He sends the marker post flying. He's a bit wider there even than we saw for Essa on the previous lap, and in the Bentley a couple of laps ago I should say, but Nowakowski just about reins the McLaren in, then turns up through McLean's and towards Coppice once again. So Nowakowski, excuse me, in the 720 McLaren, the car that hasn't really troubled the top end of the points so far this season. They had a 26th at Bathurst, a 15th last time out though for Carbon Sim Sports at Spa, so they did manage to get themselves into the top 15, but only just. That means they're carrying that little bit of ballast coming into this weekend, then down into the final 2 corners. Nowakowski with a time that he set earlier on of a 25.4, but so far it doesn't look like you're going to have to get anything like down to those sort of times to challenge for a top position on the grid, does it? Out of Goddard's, nice and neat and tidy over the curb, and Nowakowski then can only go 6th. So I don't know what goes on in the middle of these top 10 shootouts, Alex, but the trend of the cars that were quick in the earlier session continuing to be so in the top 10 is not holding true.
No, but now we have Griphax Engineering and Jonas Salvalainen from Finland. Let's see if he can get that Mercedes to fly without wings around this circuit, because they are the 7th car. mean, we've had Cecilia Simonini, Noble, Essa, Hartveld, Nowakowski. I did actually spot the Nowakowski going through. Schwanzkov actually took the Marco Polo on the inside out, so he took 2 within the first half of the lap here at Donington Park. But Jonas Salvalainen looks to be a little bit neater and tidier in the Mercedes. Comes out of McLean's, up the hill into Coppice, but Grip Hacks Engineering. Very, very astute set of Finnish drivers. They did actually put some very good performances in for Sprint Cup Season 3. And they did contest for top 5s at the very, very least. They're even fighting for wins at one point. So don't count this band of Finnish drivers out as he comes through Melbourne. Number 11 now makes its way up towards Goddard's, and Epic Sim Racing saying, so where did Baldwin disappear to? Well, he's in qualifying for Yazheet Pirelli, who are last out on the circuit. But Jonas Salvalainen comes across the line, goes P1 in the Mercedes and has broken the trend, and that is by a country mile. That's nearly, what, 0.3 of a second ahead of Jesus Cecilia? So Salvalainen has definitely found something in that Mercedes that has worked.
Yes, and the reason he's been able to do that is because he pretty much matched his time from the previous session. He did a 25.458, and that was a 4.85, so within half a tenth or so of the time he set earlier. He's the only driver so far across either of the splits, really, that's been able to do that. Right, Dominic Blyer for DB1 Triton Racing, the winners at Mount Panorama at the start of the season. Then they had to endure a difficult Spa with all of that success ballast, so they were only 17th in the Ardennes Forest, but now they shed the weight entirely, and they would hope they're now back to the sort of pace that they had for the season opener, and that certainly seems to be the case. Blyer was 3rd quickest in the earlier session, also did a 25.4 though, so he now is also going to have to match what he did earlier on, but on slightly colder tyres, slightly colder brakes, slightly lower pressure in those tyres as well. Dominic has to be on it right from the get-go. The Bentley, though, looks neat and tidy through the chicane. Bit of a bobble over that second curve, but nothing too untoward. And now onto the brakes into Melbourne. Now, does he pick up that first apex? He does. That is absolutely inch perfect there through the penultimate corner. And you've got to be, because then you're accelerating steeply uphill into Goddard's corner. Ahead of him, you can see Savalainen there just about to dive into the pit lane, but not proving to be much of a hindrance there to Dominic Blyer, who comes across the line then, a 25.485 to beat, and he can't do it. It's only 3rd quickest, over half a second off pole position. Dominic Blyer then will be 0.3 of a second, excuse me, will be just, he'll be guaranteed a top 5 starting position at least, but he would have liked to have been up there challenging for a front row.
Okay, our penultimate car out for Super Pole qualifying for the 12 Hours of Donington Park is Arta Camera, and there I have just spotted a lesser spotted Yazheet Pirelli car making its out lap at the moment. So Arta Camera now makes his way through into the old hairpin on his hot lap. Let's see if BMW Team G2 Esports can get a pole position for the first time this season. And with the likes of Gregor Schill and Niles Noyox, this team actually took the Sprint Cup Season 3 title. BMW going through the exit of the Fogarty S's. Can he make up the time going through the Melbourne hairpin? Runs a little bit wide, but that will hopefully carry some momentum through for the 62 BMW M6 GT3, which in real life will be replaced by the incoming BMW M4 GT3. But Arthur Camera, penultimate driver in this Super Pole shootout, comes across the line and stays. I can't believe I'm saying this. He's 9th.
Wow. Wow. I don't know what to say to that. That is a shock for Camera. It was a scrappy lap there, wasn't it? He made a couple of mistakes, and maybe that BMW just doesn't bring its tyres up to temperature quite as quickly as some of the other cars. Now, James Baldwin has had a really quick outlap, because you can see, look, he's caught Camera halfway down the Craner curves. So James Baldwin has really been working these tyres hard on the outlap to try and get himself in the best possible position to challenge for pole. Now, he was only half a tenth quicker than second place in the first qualifying session, but second place was Arthur Camera, who we know has had a bit of a nightmare there. So the next fastest driver was Blyer, and Baldwin had 2 tenths in hand over him. So James might now be feeling a bit more confident but he still needs to put the lap together. It's looked good so far. He wasn't delayed by Camera, who stayed well out of the way heading down the Craner curves, and now James Baldwin just has to negotiate the two most difficult corners on the track, arguably the Melbourne hairpin and the Goddard's hairpin. Baldwin, though, of course, has raced this circuit for real in the British GT Championship now in a McLaren 720S GT3, and he was pretty rapid even in slippery conditions at Donington Park. Can he now use these pretty much perfect conditions to get pole position for the third round of the SimGrid World Cup? Across the line he comes then, James Baldwin crosses the line, and no, it's only second! James Baldwin will be on the front row, but it is not quite enough for the pole position. It will be Savalainen in the Mercedes that sets the top time.
Well, who'd have thunk it? Mercedes beats McLaren at Donington Park in Split 1 qualifying. So, I mean, Mercedes, Jonas Savalainen did a really, really good job. He hooked up that car when he needed to. It's when it was mattered most. I'm hearing something in the background, though, that there is an under-investigation situation with the 149 Yazheat Pirelli car, I understand.
Yes, now I made the point that Baldwin had completed his outlap very quickly. Well, he might have started it too quickly. You are told when you're allowed to leave the pit lane, and he exited the pit lane, we think, potentially too early. So we're waiting for news on that, and we'll try and bring it to you if we can before the broadcast is over. If not, head to our social media pages for updates on that, but that could be a really unfortunate way to lose a strong front row starting position.
Yeah, so, I mean, the thing is that if he has exited not under the instructions that were given, then straight away that gives a perfectly valid reason for the stewards and race control to make the deferred judgment on that. So we will keep you updated, but to be honest with you, that lap Right, so it looks like, Andy, we've got our pole sitters. We thought it was going to be a McLaren double pole here at Donington Park, but it's Grip Hacks Engineering's Jonas Savalainen that really put the cat amongst the pigeons and put it on pole in Split 1.
Yes, he did, and Jonas joins us now in the commentary box. Well, that was a fantastic qualifying session to watch, a brilliant lap for you, Jonas, as well. Fifth in the first session, but pole position in the top 10 shootout. That was pretty special.
Yeah, that was a dream lap. I'm out of words. I gave all I got, and yes, P1. I'm so happy. Sorry, I cannot speak English at the moment because I'm so excited.
That's fine. It's great to hear that genuine excitement, because I guess you probably didn't expect that coming into the qualifying session.
No, not at all. I was pretty sure that I can make it to Super Bowl, but I could only dream of being in top 3. But hey, here we are.
And you were the only driver, I think, in that top 10 shootout that sort of matched the lap that you'd done in the earlier session. So how much of that comes down to the outlap? Because you've got only one lap to get those tyres up to the right temperature.
Yeah, for me, I didn't focus on the tires that much. I just wanted to get the feeling for the car, how it acts on like full speed, at least close to full speed on the outlap. And yeah, I didn't focus that much on tires, really. I put few clicks of more pressure into the tires, and that's it.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked really well for you, didn't it? And this is a much-needed boost in confidence, I'd say, because the season has been difficult for you guys so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and we don't know how Mercedes is going to do in the race, because it's quite a gas guzzler, to be fair.
Well, it's quick. We know it's quick, and that is a big part of it. Jonas, congratulations on pole position, and good luck for the 12 hours of Donington Park.
Thank you.
There you have it then, Griphax Engineering on the pole position against all the odds, Alex, but this is what we said right from the start. We could see a surprise pole sitter, because nailing that one lap on cold-ish tyres is not easy to do, and even James Baldwin, with all of his sim and real world experience, wasn't quite able to back up the pace he had in Q1, whereas Savalainen was, and a fully deserving pole sitter.
Yeah, congratulations to Grip Hacks Engineering for that fantastic lap, that great consistency. But it's not just in the racing itself, it's also in qualifying. And as you said, the format that we've got here for Season 2 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup, it really has added a nice new dynamic to where people end up on the grid. And Jonas Savalainen proved that in spades. It really has provided a great spectacle here at Donington Park. But the wait is not too far away. Round 3 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup hits your screens, and we will be going green at around about 1 o'clock Central European summertime this coming Saturday. A big thank you as always. Don't forget, you can find out, if you want to find out anything about how to get the latest setup, how to get some professional tuition, how to maybe get your track maps in order, head to Coach Dave Academy, run by Dave Perella himself. You can also head to, if you wanted maybe some new sim racing equipment, you know, maybe like say a new set of pedals, maybe a new sim rig or whatever, in that sort of aspect, you can go to Thrustmaster and head over there. Maybe do like David Christie once did and bought a brand new T300 RS. Also, we'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors and partners at the likes of the Virtual Competition Organisation, who are the main sponsors for the championship. Our good friends over at AK Informatica that are providing a handful of prizes for Split 2. Also, don't forget to get your ExpressVPN deal. It's an affiliate deal. Sign up for 12 months, and courtesy of the SimGrid, using the link on your screens, you can get 3 months absolutely free. Well, on behalf of Andy McEwan and myself, Alex Goldschmidt, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for further updates on all our relevant social medias, and we'll see you for the 12 hours of Donington, round 3 of the SimGrid VCO World Cup this coming Saturday. Good night.
Thank you.